All right, we'll bring in Lloyd Vance, always kind enough to join us every week throughout the football season. Does a great job covering the NFL, correspondent for the NFL Network. What's going on, pal?
Oh, not too much. Cold out here, but looking forward to the games this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll get into some of the news and notes in a moment. You watched the end of that Minnesota and New Orleans Saint game. Listen, you played football, you know the game, and everyone's killing this kid Williams. They're saying he was scared of the contact. Maybe he didn't want to go in high. I just think he was fundamentally out of place. And just it was a bad play on his part. He didn't necessarily lose the game. I mean, he also had the pick that brought him back, but everyone's going to remember that play. Is that one of the most bizarre endings you've seen?
Totally. Probably since the Music City Miracle with Frank Wycheck throwing it back to Kevin Dyson, and he takes the house for Titans against the stunned Bills. But this was just incredible. And unfortunately for Marcus Williams, an all-rookie candidate, a guy, he just didn't seize the moment. Unfortunately, he did not make that tackle. And you got to tip your hat as well to Diggs, though, for keeping his balance and taking it to the house for the win.
You look at Case Keenum, and we know the storylines all week. You got the journeyman Case Keenum, you got the journeyman Foles, the starters, then benched, and then traded all over the place. You know, we can do the 6 degrees of this all week long, up until Sunday at 6:40. But the bottom line, I think, these two teams are mirror images, from the quarterback down to how they run the football, to the defense, to the line, to the secondary. I look at this game, Lloyd, on a Wednesday, and I say, right now, it's a toss-up. I really do. I mean, it could be that game that's won in the trenches, and like we talked about last week, the team that has the ball last.
Yeah, this is a tough matchup to look at because both of these teams, as you're saying, kind of overachiever types, worst to first, and really stepping up in terms of a game at the right time of the season. So I think, as we've talked about all along with the Eagles and the Vikings, it's going to be a defensive-led effort. The team that keeps the score the lowest to like 2 touchdowns or less is probably going to win this game. We saw the Eagles do it last week with the Falcons, taking them out of their game plan and then just doing some timely plays here and there. But obviously, got to watch the penalties, got to watch the turnovers, because that is also going to be the key as usual.
Yeah, and the Eagles got to clean up special teams as well. And I know the Vikings have a couple nicked up players as well as their free safety. That could be a potential loss going through concussion protocol. Look, I also, you know, to me, I also think the edge rushers of Minnesota could also play in this game. We already know about the interior pass rush with the Philadelphia Eagles. But the Minnesota offensive line, they're going to have to bring their lunch pail as well, just like the Eagles offensive line. But do you also see that this game also coming down to those edge rushers?
Definitely. And then these two teams are tied 13-13 all time, including the postseason. So something's got to give here. And the offensive lines are huge. You got 2 replacement guys out there. Hill is a replacement tackle for the Vikings, kind of vulnerable around the edge. He had a difficult time this past weekend with Cameron Jordan, and they took advantage of him. So the Eagles are probably going to look to add Brandon Graham over him. And obviously, Big V, he allowed the only sack to Tack McKinley against the Falcons. He struggled all season, so they're going to try to get their all-pro Everson Griffin against him. So the team that is going to get the sacks and produce the turnovers behind that is definitely going to be key. And as well for Keenum as well as Nick Foles, they got to have some ball security out there. I know Nick Foles had 2 fumbles, but they were both recovered by the Eagles. But you know, the ball may not bounce their way this time, and they got to cut down on those types of situations.
I know it's Wednesday. You don't have to give me full disclosure, but what direction you leaning towards? Who you leaning towards?
Sure. You know, last week I texted you that I ended up 3-1 with that.
I know you were trolling me. I know. So did I, though. You know, by the way, but go ahead.
I'll give you my pick. And I know I'm born and raised in the Philadelphia area. My father is a season ticket holder, so him and his friends are going out there. And you know, when I look at this one, unfortunately, I just kind of see it as the Vikings season. You know, that just seeing the Turner season around, that big play there. And then that defense against Nick Foles, who, let's face it, was kind of shaky in the game against the Falcons. I think he's going to have a turnover. This time that won't bounce off someone's knee and go 20 yards for a reception. I think this time he may see a pick 6 or something like that, turn his game into favor of the Vikings. So it's going to be a close game, but I think the Vikings lead Philadelphia win.
Shaky in the first quarter, settled down. They were able to actually get the ground game going, and then much better in the second quarter by Foles, and maybe it's a different story, as you alluded to, Sunday at 6:40. You look at the AFC side of the ball. Listen, I've been on Jacksonville. I predicted them to beat the Steelers outright, and really, when you think about it, they dominated them. They smacked them around. Yeah, the Steelers were able to throw themselves back in that game. I want to go back to that game for a second. The 2 fourth down calls where you had the crack toss and then you had the play action. Big Ben comes out today, or yesterday I should say, Tuesday, and says he's not allowed to audible, which you're talking about a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback. I just think that's a crock of BS. I mean, what's going to happen? You're going to get cut? In those situations, if you're Big Ben, why not audible there? If the sneak's there, you go for the QB sneak. If not, then you at least try to run up the gut. I mean, did you look at that and kind of just shake your head a little bit?
Yeah, I did. When I saw those post-game comments, I couldn't believe them. And, you talked about before I came on about Todd Haley obviously not going to be back with the team. His contract has not been extended, and they're going to let him walk. And I think Big Ben has a cachet over his coordinator in that situation. Why not call an audible? And now, even if you're kind of stuck, maybe they could give you a little push from behind, and you're going to get that yard, especially a guy that's 6'5", 240. He's got the body type to get that first down. So that happened not once but twice, and they were both head scratchers. So the Steelers, they had a lot of talk, a lot of mouth, and Jacksonville, as you said, came in there once again, like they did in the regular season, very physical, and able to go both blow for blow with the Steelers and then knock them out at the end. So it was a tremendous win for them. Blake Bortles, I was all over him leading up to this game, but he made a lot of great plays, a lot of good throws, timely throws. And then you just can't say enough about Leonard Fournette. That rookie just controlled the pace of the game, had over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. And the Steelers, in the end, their team with some dysfunction, and Mike Tomlin's going to stay, but I think you're going to see some changes on his staff.
Yeah, and I think what goes under notice is the fact that you look at the Jacksonville offensive line and the job that Pat Flattery has done all the years with the Giants, and you look at what they're able to do. They've only allowed 24 sacks this year. So, I mean, think about it. They're really keeping their quarterback upright to give him an opportunity to either extend plays or to make 1 or 2 plays. How about the fact that Tomlin decides we're going to go for the onside kick? Again, I know it's Monday morning quarterbacking. I hate that because at the end of the day, if Jacksonville's offense is going to make plays like that, at least make it tougher for them. Extend the game a little bit and extend the field, because when he did that, I turned around and I'm talking to myself as I typically do watching these games, and I'm taking my notes and I'm like, wait a second. You got 2 timeouts, 2-minute warning. You know for a fact, you could have bet the mortgage that Jacksonville was going to run 3 straight running plays, and that's exactly what they did. So if anything, you're going to get the ball in good position and maybe you get a decent return.
Yeah, and the Steelers, their defense has always been their calling card, that they could make a play. Guys like Troy Polamalu step up, and I know they're missing Ryan Shazier, but that unit he doesn't have the confidence in him, and they got to kind of rework themselves. They do have some great pieces with Hayward and some other guys there, but in the draft from free agency, they got to rebuild that defense, because there's no way they should allow 45 points. And then he elects to onside because he didn't believe in that unit. So they definitely have some work to do in terms of their defense.
I look at Jacksonville's defense, and the way they win this game is because of their defense. Brady's been sacked 35 times this season, 15 last year. I documented it the other day. You look at Jacksonville, they get to the quarterback. They hit the quarterback. You get Brady off his spots. Now, if he's got time to throw, even though that secondary of Jacksonville is pretty solid, I think he's going to pick them apart with Gronk. If they can't at least hit him, put pressure, bring something up the gut with those linebackers, those DEs, I think it's going to be a long night. But I think they're going to be able to get to him. My only question and my fear really is, if you're a Jacksonville fan, the one negative mark on that defense is the explosive plays. I mean, you're talking about opponents who have had 31 rushes of at least 12 yards, 58 passes of at least 16 yards. They've allowed 9 touchdowns of at least 30 yards. The 2 fourth down plays the other day against Pittsburgh, those were gorgeous throws by Big Ben. I mean, he was dropping dimes, but those were long touchdown tosses. That would scare me a little bit, especially if you give Brady time to throw.
Definitely, and the key to me of this, as you were saying, is they're going to have to go to the Giants playbook from 2007 when they defeated the Patriots when they looked like the greatest team. They got to get to Brady. They got to frazzle him in the pocket, get him at every opportunity, even if it's not sacks, get him on the ground, keep him uncomfortable. They can keep Cooks and the rest of those receivers, as you're kind of alluding to, in check, but definitely have to keep Miles Jack or somebody athletic on Gronk. or bracket him as much as possible because that's Brady's number one guy. So the thing is, the Jaguars led the NFL with 7 defensive touchdowns, that like they had a 50-yard return against the Steelers. They're going to need something like that in this game because let's face it, they played 11 times versus the Patriots, the Jaguars, and the Patriots are 10-1 against them. So it's going to take a huge effort. They got to cut down on the penalties, add some bad penalties against the Steelers, and then they're going to need some turnovers and sacks and dictate the pace of the game, control the time of possession, keep Tom Brady on the bench by running Fournette and that big offensive line.
What do you think overall, some of the coaching carousel, some of the coaching changes here? You got Patricia with Detroit, and I know there were reports he was going to go with New York, and because he, quote, spurned New York, it's not a hot destination, which is just total BS as well. I mean, anyone would kill to be head coach of the New York Giants. That's just a fact. You know what that franchise represents. And now you got Pat Shurmur in line to be the next coach of the Giants, which I think when it's all said and done, it doesn't have to be that hiring that really makes the fan base get excited. But you see what he's been doing with Case Keenum and what he's done in the past with the Philadelphia Eagles and their quarterbacks. I mean, he takes McNabb from an average quarterback to, at times, a really good quarterback. So how about your thoughts, Patricia in Detroit, and then you got Shurmur, and it looks like he's going to be the Giants' next head coach.
Sure, and Matt Patricia, he wanted to go with Bob Quinn, who's the former Patriots guy, as the general manager for the Lions. I think that was really the turning point for him, and it's an opportunity for him to go there and rebuild that defense with Ziggy Ansah and a bunch of those guys, and hopefully they'll get a running game going. Amir Abdullah's just not gotten it done for them in the backfield, so hopefully they'll get a running game going. Lean on the defense because that's particular in the bad weather up there with the NFC North. So I think that was a good hire for them, and he'll go in there with a pretty good draft pick and kind of rebuild that team. Giants, we're going to see about Pat Shurmur, a guy I was around a lot, as you're saying, when he was quarterbacks coach for the Eagles. Did a very nice job there. I think he was a little bit over his head when he was with the Browns as a head coach. Obviously just a very bad situation, and he's kind of rebuilt himself back with the Vikings. So I think it's going to be a good hire for the New York Giants. He's going to come in there and bring some discipline. He's a very stern guy, and he's going to want to work with a veteran quarterback. So Eli Manning, I know that he will be returning. They probably will bring in a young guy eventually for them and start grooming as well behind Eli. But you're probably not going to see a lot of shenanigans from Eli Apple and Odell. They're going to fall in the line, and he's going to spread the football around, and it should be a very exciting team.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do at number 2, whether they go a quarterback route or say they take a best player available, maybe Barkley out of Penn State, who knows. All right, let me let you get out of here on this. We talked about a lot of these changes with some of these veteran franchises, and look at all the moves that Seattle is doing. I mean, you're talking about additions and subtraction, and they're firing guys, they're bringing back guys. I mean, is this a shake-up to kind of wake up that franchise, or ultimately, listen, these changes had to be done?
Well, Q, this is the new way of the National Football League. We're seeing all these coaches and a lot of coordinators kind of stick around, and they're kind of pointing at other people, namely the assistants, saying, look, I've empowered your assistants to kind of teach these young guys, coach them up, get them ready to play, and my job's more as a figurehead, and if you're not getting the job done, I'm going to bring somebody else in. So Chris Richard, their defensive coordinator, we saw the lapses with that Seattle defense, particularly in that Jacksonville game, and they wanted somebody that was going to bring some discipline to that unit. Obviously, they have had some major injuries with those guys, but we'll see what Ken Norton could do. Very familiar with that, with Pete Carroll and the scheme that he's running. So Carroll's trying to change some things up, but obviously Carroll, Russell Wilson, John Snyder, the general manager, will be back. I think Seattle would definitely be a team to be reckoned with in the NFC West. They lost some close games, so they did have to do some reshuffling on their coaching staff, but I expect them back to compete next season with the Niners and the Cardinals and everybody else in that division.
All right, my friend, great stuff as always. Enjoy Championship Sunday. We will talk next week, and then we'll certainly get into the Super Bowl, which is a little more than 2 weeks away. Always appreciate the time.
All right, thanks for having me on.